Oh, can you hear this? Because I'm playing with my little fidget, and I just want
It
to make
is
sure it's
doing
not
the
loud.
clicking thing.
Oh, okay. Is it better if I do it down here?
It's still clicking.
You gotta find a quieter.
Do we have any silent ones?
No, but I can. It has a nice shape. So why don't I just spin it? I'll just
Okay,
it like
without
that.
clicking.
Yeah. Oh, it's so tempting. Okay, I'm gonna just get the click sound. Is that okay? Here you go. Okay, I'm good. Hey boos, welcome to the Soft Podcast. I'm Brittney-Elizabeth, an artist, content creator, and dreamer who is healing from autistic burnout, learning to unmask, creating a big, beautiful, unapologetically me-shaped life, and who has answered the inner call to help others do the same.
My name is Kimberland, a newly realized neurodivergent, intuitive melanated life coach, healing from burnout in Medellin, Colombia, where I am designing a life that brings me joy at a soul level.
Before we get into this, there are some things we want you to know up front.
We curse. Use headphones if you need to, but we're gonna speak freely. We are not experts. We don't know what the fuck we're doing. We can tell you what we have done, but that isn't the only way. We promise to be transparent about our journeys in hopes of creating space for you to honor yours. And what we expect from you: community, interaction. This is a safe space that we are building here, and we're happy for you to be a part of it. In this particular episode, we're talking about taking our power back and finding our voice and what that process has looked like and sounded like.
This episode is in honor of Take Your Power Back in the Soft app. It's one of the newest practices, and it's in the sanctuary. It's a 10-minute meditation that is designed to help you pull your power back after situations that make you feel disenfranchised. Take that 10 minutes to visit the sanctuary in the Soft app and do Take Your Power Back so that you can feel it all back, so you can, to help you remember who the fuck you are.
Period.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me this question one time and it was like age dependent. So I'm going to ask it to you. Tell me what your life was like when you were 7.
There are walls in my body right now. There are
Uh-oh.
versions of me that are like, no. So I find that really interesting that they're coming up. Let me take a moment with them.
Please.
Dang, this is another segue into the Soft app. I made the Soft app as a response to my own healing journey. So everything in it is something that I used based on what I learned about healing and therapy modalities. There's a lot of emphasis on internal family systems in Soft. And what that is, it's parts work, kind of like what we were talking about last week, but rather than thinking about it in terms of fight, flight, fawn, freeze, flop, even though I asked my therapist if we could start doing that too, and he said yes. I think about it in terms of which inner child is this affecting and what do they need. When you asked about me at 7, a part of me is like very resistant to be seen. And so I just want to take a moment and just remind her that you're safe. We're safe. You're with me now. You're in good hands and we can talk about this. And Kimberland is safe too. Okay, my life at 7. I lived in Germany with my parents and my older sister. At that point in my childhood, it was a very normal childhood, like from my perspective. My parents seemed to be getting along. I loved my dad a lot. I had a close relationship with him. I was taking piano lessons. I had a little friend group at my school where I lived in Heidelberg, Germany. And it was nice, but it was kind of the end of what was nice. And I think that's where that pain comes from, is like, I think that my childhood kind of ended around 8 or 9.
Wow.
So 7, is pushing up against the end. And I think she just that part of me wants to protect what, the pure part of my childhood and not share it, because that's mine, she's saying.
Yeah, understood.
So, what about you? What was your childhood like at 7?
So I was living in New Orleans. I was at a small private Lutheran school that I had been at since preschool. At 7, I had braces for the first time. I used to suck my thumb, and my teeth were, baby, it was a lot. But I was still always smiling, even though my teeth were crip walking. Like, it was a lot. At 7, that's about first grade. I didn't like my teacher very much, but I was always really good at school. So I was excelling. I knew how to read going into kindergarten. I knew how to write in cursive going to kindergarten. So I was always doing well, but I remembered not being connected to that teacher and not really finding a lot of joy there. So for clarification purposes, and anybody who wants like the nitty gritty on this, you can go to my website, kimberlandjackson.com, and there's a blog that lives there. And that will come back up in this conversation. But in that blog, I have a couple blog posts about my relationship with my dad. So my biological father died before I was born. My stepdad, who I call my dad, who is my brother's father, came into my life somewhere around 6 or 7. And I remember it being fun. Like I remember we would go to Chuck E. Cheese, and he was the tickle monster, and we would go in New Orleans. There's Lake Pontchartrain, and it's gigantic. And there are also levees, and the levees are like really big hills. So we would slide down the hills on a cardboard box, and it was really nice. I liked that. My cousins lived very close to me, so they were like around the corner and all that. I was always outside riding my bike somewhere, going somewhere, talking to somebody outside somewhere. And interestingly enough, much like you, the happiest memories of childhood kind of end there. So after that time where I was 7, so my mom was pregnant with my brother. This is a lot, but also there's
And
a lot
trigger
more
warning for anyone
information.
listening.
Yeah, because I don't even know how to what the trigger and what the warn, but it's a lot. But I also want to be very transparent of what this has looked like. So my mom was pregnant with my younger brother. I was excited to have a sibling, and what that was, I was excited to be a big sister. But what was happening is my mom was accusing my dad of violating me, and that wasn't happening. But because she was accusing him of that, he made choices to disengage from me in order to not have that be the consistent conversation, but also to be in the house close enough to make sure that we were okay. But it was a very interesting dynamic because my dad was in the house, but we didn't have a relationship my entire childhood. So all of that started shifting around that time. And so my brother was born when I was 7 and a half. As a child, how do you interpret that? Because one moment you're the tickle monster and everything is fun and you're taking me and my cousins to Chuck E. Cheese and it's a great time. And then the next moment is like, you're not even hardly talking to me. So I interpreted that as, you have your own kid now, so it's fuck me. We were also about to move. So before my dad came, we didn't have resources. We didn't have enough, but we had too much to have food stamps or any type of assistance. So we lived in this gap of, you make too much money to get help, but not enough money to pay your bill. Our food came from the food bank, and it was very much clear that this is not name brand. This is like, you broke. Like, it was very, very obvious. And also, I was very aware that I was a burden. I was another bill. Let's say it like that. I was very aware that I was another bill. I just remember not understanding what is happening. Like, everything was fine, everything was even good, and now what is going on?
That's hard. And those are the kinds of wounds that you carry the rest of your life. You know, they require, even after you've gone on an extensive healing journey, they still require a lot of soothing over and over to remind yourself
Over
that
and over.
you should not have been made to feel like a burden. You should not have been made to feel abandoned abruptly. Like all of that was about them and not you. Is that constant reminder. And I'm sorry you have to live with that. I live with that too. It's very similar, our stories in that way.
Yeah. It's interesting just now when you said like the concept of that should have never happened to you. I didn't even really understand that until I was living in Pennsylvania in 2020. I had this therapist and I had to be on her waiting list for months. And I was like, girl, put me on there because I got some things that I need to talk about. And I don't even remember what the question was that led to this, but her response was, I am so sorry. You did not deserve that. And it was the first time that I was like, I was a little baby girl. Like, I was always a kid. I was told when I was younger that I always had a tear in my eye ready to fall. And it was always said, like, Kim, she was always ready to cry at any damn minute, always got a tear in her eye, and all of that.
Mm,
And I programmed that as you can't show feelings, you can't have feelings, you can't, that's not what you do. That's not how you do this. Now I realize I was so highly sensitive and intuitive back then. And I was always in situations where I wasn't safe. And that's
mhm.
why I was always ready to cry. Because why do you have me here in situations where I'm not safe? Like, your job is to protect me. But I'm just now undoing all of that stuff and just now being able to name it. So when that therapist was like, you didn't deserve that, it was the first time that I ever even thought about the concept of I was supposed to be protected. There are people, for whatever reasons, that didn't do that, and that wasn't fair to me, and that wasn't okay,
Absolutely.
right? As opposed to a lot of times, so in full transparency, I don't talk to my mother anymore. A lot of time there's like this bias that is stacked towards people who have the title of mother, and they're very protected. And when you
Mhm.
say things about a mother, you're immediately vilified and looked at like you're just ungrateful, clearly, because what mother would do that? And not understanding that there are so many mothers who are not mothering and should not have children. They should not be responsible for little lives.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that is how I feel about my childhood. I feel like I appreciate the fact that I wasn't aborted, but also I shouldn't have had to go through none of that at
Mhm.
all. But also, I realized that it's something that my spirit chose. And that's what keeps me grounded and level when it gets really hard. I believe that my spirit was given a preview of this is what your life is going to look like, and these are the experiences that you're going to go through, and this is how it's going to work out or how it's going to end. And I believe that my spirit was like, sign me up, I can do that. So knowing that, I get a sense of comfort in, I'm not signing up for no mediocre ass life. I'm not
Mhm.
doing that. I know me. I didn't. So it must be something that's about to come out of here. And I don't know what it is yet, and I don't see it or whatever, but there's got to be, because I would not have signed up for this life had it not been something amazing at the end.
Yeah, I like to believe the same thing. Although I think we're living it. I think this is was here, you know?
Agreed.
Yeah, we get to, we're free ass motherfuckers. We're feral. I could never want anything more than that. I could never want anything more than to have the cojones to move to another country alone. Which, for those who don't know, Kimberland currently lives in another country. And I spent some time in another country too and making my way back. And I could never want anything more than to turn back and offer a hand to other people who are looking for a light. Even if there's nothing more, it's okay. Okay, so wait, what's next?
So I think you should choose an age.
Okay. How about 9?
So by this time, I'm wearing glasses. My teacher, when I was in third grade, so again, I was always at the top of the class. Okay, so I'm always number one valedictorian. I'm smartest person. Okay, but because of that, nobody saw that I couldn't see. My prescriptions are like -9 and -8.5. So I'm sitting in class, and mind you, I can't see you since I done took my glasses off. Okay, so don't do nothing that I need to see right now.
Okay.
But I'm sitting there and I'm doing this so that I can see the board. I'm trying to bring it into focus. And my teacher is like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Clearly, I'm trying to see. What you think I'm like?" And it made so much sense in my brain. I actually have a podcast episode about this, because sometimes I pretend I'm blind, because I feel like it is a very real possibility that my eyes could be like, "Girl, we are done." So sometimes I actually pretend that I'm blind, and I think it's important, because if my glasses were to ever break, or I have contacts in and one of them falls out, I've got to be able to help myself. And it's like so much anxiety to think about what it would be like to be dependent on people to be able to even make my way home because I can't see. So that was discovered around that time. By that time, I already knew I was going to college. So I was very focused on my academics and making sure that I was performing. I think by this time, so The Bodyguard, the movie with Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston is one of my favorite singers, and I have a blog post about this too. Because there are songs along my life that song was like a key part of my life. Um, and music has always been something that was really important to me. So anyway, by this time I had figured out that I was stuck with these people that are charged with parenting me. I found a lot of pleasure in teaching my little brother. So I taught my brother like how to tie his shoes. I taught him how to spell his name. Like I taught him a lot of things. So I kind of just took a lot of interest in that. And I believe I had a Walkman. I don't remember if it was a cassette Walkman or like the disc situation by that time, but I would listen to Yes, Jesus Loves Me every night and I would pray to my biological father, why did you leave me here with this lady? Like, what is, when you coming back? Or like, how do I come be with you? Because this is not what's up. And I have finally processed that I have to figure out how to do enough things that I could stay away from home long enough so that when I do come home, all I have to do is like homework, dinner, clean the kitchen, go to bed. So I had started like collecting activities. When you were like, what you said, you tried to get out of your after school activities. I was sign me up everything. I want to be in everything. Sign me up for everything because I don't want to go home. So I was just starting that process of being like, okay, so be smart and be in everything, and that's gonna keep you as safe as you can keep yourself right now.
Which programs did you sign up for? Do you remember any?
Girl, I played volleyball for a little while. I was in cheerleading in the park. I wound up switching into well, not switching, but adding cheerleading at school. I was in plays. I was and mind you, so I guess a fun fact about all of this. So the way that I process it now is that I was like my mother's trophy. So she was very, I was going to say proud, but I don't know that proud is actually the appropriate word. But she would talk about my accomplishments all the time. She would brag
To
about
other
my
people, I'm
accomplishment.
sure.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so smart. I've got this. I got this trophy, top of the class, da da da, all the things, all the things, all the things. What that led to was once I said, because at this time I was on the track to being a doctor. So when I was 8, I decided I'm going to college and I'm going to be a doctor. So when I said that, she started putting me in summer programs. So I was dissecting animals and learning how to conduct experiments, and I'm in robotics and I'm in the gifted program for this and like all this. So I'm in stuff and she's signing me up for it because I'm so smart. And then she can brag and say her daughter's doing all the things. But I was doing that because I don't want to be at home. So that's fine. I will go learn all of these things and it comes easy to me. No problem. Those are the things. So it was a lot of academic type stuff. I wasn't a sports person, still not, but I did try out volleyball, and it was fine for the moment. So yeah. So what about your 9-year-old life?
My last year in Germany was when I was 9. I didn't really say all of this, but okay, so my father was in the military. That's why we lived in Germany. My mother she used to be in the military, but before I was born. So at the time in which we lived in Germany, she worked at my elementary school. She was a registrar there. So one day we're at school and my mom, pulls me out of school and says we need to go home. And when we got home to our apartment, it was empty. So my father had come while we were all out of the house and emptied everything, just took everything. Like he left a few things, but not much. I mean, like I was taking piano lessons, he took the piano. He took the curtains off the windows and he was just gone. So that same feeling of like, your father being there and then not suddenly, that happened to me around 9 because after that point, I can probably count on my hands the amount of times I saw my father again from then until now. What I didn't know was also happening at this time was that my father had been sexually abusing my older sister. She did tell my mom. My mom knew that's not what caused the relationship to end. The relationship ended because my dad just decided one day he was done. That's what my mom says. So my poor sister, this whole time I thought I was having like a very normal childhood. She was having a very different experience.
Yeah.
And when I look back on it, I remember some things that were odd. Like I remember I had this, little My Little Ponies or some figurine, and my dad was sitting on a couch, and I was like, galloping it up his leg, and he said, "You don't do that type of thing to men." There were signs. The other thing is, I never called my dad dad. Our father wanted to be called Honey. Hi, honey. How was your day, honey? My father's a pedophile. But we were so young, I didn't realize any of this was weird. So, of all the things I most regret not being there for my sister for so long, because even after she did speak up, my mother told me that she was lying. Your sister is just a liar.
Oh
Don't
no.
believe anything she says. So she was very much alone in all of this. But at any rate, I came home, our stuff was gone, and my mother did not have enough money for us to stay where we were. So at that point, we moved we were in an apartment, but it was like a very large, it was comfortable. We were very comfortable. But after that, we moved into kind of a studio apartment with my mom, my sister, and I. There was like a studio plus an extra room. So my mother lived in the extra room. My sister and I slept in the studio space. She wanted us to stay in Germany so we could continue going to school there because it was just a much better school system. But in the end, she could not afford for that to happen. So we ended up coming back to Baltimore. This also happened when I was 9. There was a very significant moment that I didn't realize until much later in therapy. One of our last nights living in Germany, it was in the summer, and my friends and I, a bunch of little girls, were sitting outside in the grass in a circle on a blanket. I don't mess with grass. So we were sitting on a blanket. We're just all playing a game. And I think, it was just little kids in a circle playing a game. But I didn't realize how in that moment I looked around at that circle and realized, like, oh, all these little girls are going to wake up tomorrow and life is going to be the same for them. They're going to be able
Mm.
to go to school and it's going to be the same. But like, this is the last day of my life as I know it. So I must not be as deserving as them. There must be something wrong with me because I don't get to have this anymore. And I didn't realize I had internalized that belief until much later. So that's what happened at 9.
Wow. It's interesting when I have a few friends that have gone through divorces and they have children.
Yeah.
And I've asked them how they have communicated to their children what is happening.
Hmm.
And more often than not, I usually get a response of they haven't.
Yeah.
And I always advocate to have those conversations because, in the absence of information, children create their own narratives. And
Hmm.
more often than not, it's going to be that it's our fault. And it's so important to, because like one of the friends, I was having a conversation with, his daughter's about like 5 or 6, and he was like, I didn't say anything, I don't want to bring attention to it. And I was like, you don't think she noticed that
Yeah.
y'all
Or
now live
feels
in
it.
2 different houses and she only sees
Mm-hmm.
you on the weekend, or y'all, like, you don't think that she notices that her life has changed? Like,
Mm-hmm.
come on now. And I think it's important for us to know that little people are little people. They're little people with little thought, and they're trying to make sense of this world, and it's not fair to not give an explanation, or to give an explanation that places blame somewhere that it's not supposed to land. It's just so unhelpful. And then we spend decades trying to identify it and make sense of it and realize that that wasn't my fault.
My parents actually did sit us down to once, and what they said was, "We're separating, and we want to know which parent you would like to live with."
Oh.
So there's one thing that could be worse than not saying anything, and it is that.
But you didn't even really get, well, you chose your mom. Did you choose your mom in
we
that conversation?
we never got they told us to think about it, and then that was the last we heard of any of this, and it was months before the coming home from school, and my dad, it might have
Yeah.
even been like a year. But you can't, like, what a weird position to put a child in. That's what I remember feeling like. How am I supposed to choose and not wanting the other person to feel bad? And like,
Right.
it was ridiculous. So don't do that either. Don't ask your freaking kids, your young elementary school age children, to choose something like that.
Yeah, you figured
It's
that part
crazy.
out, and then you
Mm-hmm.
assure them that they are loved no matter whose house that they're at, no matter what, that you are important to us, and we are going to make sure that you're okay and that you're safe. Like that's,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
Okay,
crazy.
so that was 9. So let's
Yes.
then jump to 12.
See, I've repressed my childhood, so I have to Google just to
I
remember what's
understand.
what.
There is no
Um,
judgment here.
and I've recovered a lot of it, but I don't think about it like, okay, so seventh grade. So 12. When I was 12, at this point, we had, of course, we were back from Germany. We lived in Baltimore. My mother at this point had bought a house. I think she bought a house when I was in seventh grade at 12. And I was in private school. See, when we first came back, I went to a city school for just a brief moment, and it was horrible. It was hell, teased mercilessly. And so my experience of going from there to Friends, where I went next, was like, in spite of the fact that there were a lot of other issues at Friends, like it was a wonderful transition, and I was very happy. I did have a full scholarship to go there, which is part of why it was problematic, because there are very few Black kids, and there's a lot, at least at that time, a lot of like microaggressions happening. My nickname was Ghetto Booty, for instance. Kids used to run by me in the hallway with sheets of paper and rub it across my hair to see if it would be greasy, for instance. So there were other things going on there. But
Wow.
again, I didn't register all that at the time. Good old delayed processing kept me safe. And plus, I had bigger fish to fry at that time. Because the other thing that happened in seventh grade is that I started taking the bus to and from school. My bus would get home maybe about an hour and a half to 2 hours before my mother got home from work. A block over from her house, this man lived, and he started to track when I got off the bus to at the end of the day. And then he started, like, one day he saw me climbing the tree in our front yard. He struck up a conversation with me. I didn't know him. He would have been at the time like 20 or 21. It was around, I think it was sixth grade, but it could have been seventh, when he started to molest me. And it went on for a while. And the way it would happen is I would get off the bus, I would go home. He would see it. I wouldn't know that he was seeing it. He'd come over, he would do what he wanted. He'd pull up his pants and he would leave. He knew all the schedules of when my mother was going to come home when she wasn't there. You know what I mean? And that was just it for a long time. It had to have been like 2 years of that until I told a teacher. And I told a teacher at the end of seventh grade. So I don't know if that would make me 12 or 13 at that point. But I'll just tell you, because in case we skip ahead some years, but
Mhm.
told a teacher who, had a conference with my mom. And my mom became very angry at me. She told me, I can't trust you anymore because you went out and had sex with that man. She stopped letting me go outside. That was it. I never was allowed to go outside again as a child, which is a big part of why I ran away all the time. She did press charges. He did go to jail. But that was my first realization that people hate women, because going through the court process, it wasn't about this man did something bad. It was about, were you a slut who deserved it? That was very much the energy. And I remember telling my own lawyer, I mean, I just assumed, I was a child, so I didn't
Right.
know what people would be thinking. But I remember the day that I mentioned to him that I was a virgin when this happened, and the look of shock on his face. I will never forget the look of shock on his face. Like, oh my God, like, you're not a huge slut. Like, so no, I'm sorry. I'm also not slut shaming. You know what? I'm not slut shaming. I want to make that clear. But it's just the fact that they just expected that I somehow deserved or caused this,
Yeah.
instead of what actually happened, that
Yeah.
has always disturbed me and has perpetuated that just seeing that. I've that would be the first of many times I would see it in my own life, and then just witness it in other people's too. So, okay, so how about you?
Wow. Um,
I hate this.
I'm
It's not
just
funny. I'm sorry.
thinking we have to do a better job
Yeah.
of protecting our children. I wonder, skipping ahead, but also I know that I was called into education because I was able to see children who were broken because I was also a broken child. It's at the point now, like when people say they want to have kids, I'm like, why?
Same. I don't get it
Why do you
either.
tell me why you want to have children
I
and
will not
tell me
understand.
what you are going to do to protect your children and believe your children? Because, of course, we can't control other
Mhm.
people, but our job is to protect these little humans that you chose to bring into the world.
Too many people have children for their own ego's sake.
Yes.
And it's very frightening, you know, and it very much reminds me of my mom because I left that part out, but she was a childcare provider when I was very young, and she loves children, little children, which I believe now is just because they're easier to control, the less
Mine
control, you know,
too.
yeah. But I think that it feeds her ego, you know,
Yes.
and I've seen this replayed over and over when I look at other people who are having children, in spite of the fact that their position from where I stand is so clearly not suitable for having children, but they're excited to do it anyway. Like, who are you really serving in
Right.
making that choice? It's so unfortunate because it's the people who think through this who aren't having kids, and we're
That's
the
it.
ones who really should be having kids.
Exactly. We understand
Mm,
the gravity of it.
mm-hmm,
My cousin and I talk all the time because I always thought I would have kids. I
mm-hmm,
thought that my breaking of cycles would happen through having my own children. Even in that blog that I referenced earlier, I would say all the time, like, when I have a daughter, I'm going to do this differently or whatever. I now realize how many children I've had the opportunity to mother and to be a safe place for. I just wish that people took the time to really, I don't know how you can take it lightly. I don't understand.
ignorance.
Like, this little person is dependent on you for their life and to learn how to navigate the world. What the fuck are you doing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot. Oh, I wanted to ask you a question before I say that. You said when you took the bus home, did you all have school buses or was it public transportation?
Well, I took public transportation. Yeah.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have school buses in New Orleans. It was only public transportation.
Um,
And I started taking the bus. So when my brother was born, we were able to move into a house.
mm-hmm.
So we had a house and it was further away from my school. So I had to take the bus home. And I had an hour to get home from school. I don't know if y'all know this, but you can't really control the bus. You kind of just own it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I went to private school as well, scholarship gang. Okay. Public school, it was a lot. It was a lot that was happening. Y'all fighting, y'all loud, y'all doing a lot. And there were many times that the bus would get delayed, which
Mm-hmm.
caused me to get delayed, which means I got my ass beat when I got home. Because clearly I was out having sex. Clearly, that's what I was doing. So I was navigating that. I had gotten hit by a car twice by this time because
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get to the bus and the bus is about to leave and I can't. It's another 15 minutes. And if I get home 15 minutes late, I'm gonna get a whipping. So
Goodness.
I'm getting to the bus, you know. And I never talked about it. Like, thankfully I didn't break any limbs or anything like that. But like, I used to pretend like I was on the football field and I just bounced off the car and I just keep it pushing because I got to get on the bus. And the bus driver is
Mm-hmm.
like, "Little girl, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Sir, can you drive and talk? Because
Goodness.
I got to get
Yeah.
home because if I don't get home, it's going to be hell to pay." That's what life was like. By this time I had started cheerleading at school. I was still in all the things. And my parents had decided that they were getting married, which was odd because by this time I am very conscious that my mother believes that my dad is touching me, though it is not
Mm.
happening. So I am very aware by this point something's awry and y'all like just wow out here. But also, if that's what you think is happening, why are you marrying him? I used to wish that my parents would get hit by a truck and that I would just be an orphan. I was doing all I could to protect my brother from everything that was happening. So I definitely was taking the brunt of all the things just so he didn't have to be getting beat. My mother loved extension cords and she loved them
Mm.
fresh out the bathtub. Like, it was just, my nervous system was in shambles. Like, I was just
Mm-hmm.
always on pins and needles. I was always getting punished for something that I didn't do. I was often called a liar and I didn't understand because I wasn't lying. And then I remember this one time, so I had an older cousin. So what would that make her, a second cousin, I guess? So my mom's first cousin. So so my second cousin. So she was a teacher. Sometimes I would walk to her school instead of going home, I would go there. And then her mom, my great aunt, lived around the corner from me. So she would take me home and then go see her mom and all of that. So I remember this one day I had gone to her school and I called my mom, called home and left a message on the answer machine, right? This is back in the days of answer machines, wasn't no cell phone, all right? I leave a message. I'm like, hey, I'm with our cousin. She's going to drop me off, all the things, whatever. So I get home that night and our answer machine was real funky at the time. And sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes it would skip. Sometimes it ate the tape. Like, it was a lot that was going on. And I got home and I got in trouble for being late. I was with our cousin. Like, and she's there. Like, all right, I got her. I had her all this time, and I still got in trouble. And I remember after that spending hours one weekend, or my mama was, I don't know what time it was, but I was home and my mama wasn't. And I spent hours listening to the answering machine tape to find this message and prove to her that I wasn't lying. I found the message. I queue it up. I can't wait for her to get home because I need you to know I'm not a liar. Like, I'm not this person that you can make me out to be. And I played the message and she act like it didn't even happen. And I was like, but you beat my ass for this. Like, what is happening right now? When my parents got married, I tried to stand up and object at the wedding. And it was weird because my dad continued talking to my cousins and he would have full-on conversations with them and he would not talk to me about anything. Our conversations were, good morning, your mama called, it's time to eat. That was about it. I knew that if I wanted to go outside, or there was a park that, this is not going to sound as bougie as it sounds, but we lived near a golf course. My great aunt lived right across the street from the golf course. So inside the golf course, there was this lake, and I would go in there, and that would be my place that I would hide away from the world. So I would try to learn how to skip rocks. I would pack a picnic basket, and I would be there all day, all night, all the time. If I'm gone. I knew that my dad wouldn't ask a whole bunch of questions. If I said, can I go outside or can I go to the park? He would just be like, be home for the street lights, come on, right? So I knew that was another conversation that we would have. Can I go to the park? And that gave me the opportunity to just kind of go and be for a second and just sit out the hours. I would be out there. So 12, it was interesting. I was just getting into middle school, and I think I was just trying to find something to be happy about, whether that was dancing or music or with my friends. I just wanted to be happy and just not be at home. So I was doing everything I could to just not be at home.
It's crazy to think about getting beat, getting spankings, all of that. I know it was a generation thing and that it was just accepted in the norm, but I just don't see how therapy fucking existed then. How did nobody put together what you were doing to your child's nervous system, their self-esteem, their sense of self-trust and agency by fucking beating them every time you had a problem? What were you how does nobody get that? I still remember just listening to you talk about it, just thinking about how it felt in those moments leading up to it. Did your mother ever try to have a little pep talk, not pep talk, but just a little conversation with you right beforehand about why did you do this or why did that happen, and then just get into the beating? That made it worse. I'm sorry, it didn't make it worse, but it's just what the fuck? It was the whole thing was a mind fuck.
It was. And as you say that, when you're was there a conversation? I'm like, ish, but there was a belt that was hanging on the doorknob.
Yes, you knew it was coming
there all the time.
Yeah,
if they go over by that door, and it wasn't there, my dad never whipped me. If something had to, that belt stayed on that doorknob.
It's crazy.
24/7, unless it was being used to beat us.
How can you expect to raise a well-adjusted, mentally healthy child in conditions like that? It's harder too to forgive because it's that most of that generation does not give a shit or own it. Nobody can even say, I'm sorry, it seems like. And then everybody, like you said, when you talk about a mother, people protect them. They need to own up to some of this shit and have some accountability because it was deeply unhealthy. And now here we are still talking about it, still affected by it. And some people might argue, let it go. But guess what? The people who feel like we should let it go are holding it. They haven't addressed it yet. That's the only reason why you would be let it go, because you are still having somebody else's internal voice in your mind telling you that your own emotions aren't valid enough to even look at.
Yeah.
It's so fucked up. Whew. Okay. Yes. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Seriously, no, you're preaching, because I wasn't the child that needed that. I don't know what type of child needs that, but I definitely wasn't. I was the child. I learned from other people's mistakes. You tell me the stove is hot, I believe you. I don't need to go over there and touch it myself. Got it. Don't touch stoves.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I wasn't that type of child that was, out here just doing things. But even with that, what I appreciate about my time in education, and what I appreciate about the way that God allowed me to see myself in these children that I had the opportunity to serve, there's always a story behind the story.
Of
No
course.
child wakes up and says that they want to wreak havoc all over everything. No child wakes up and says they want to fail. No child wakes up and says, how can I hurt the people around me today? How can I do that? Like, that's not our natural disposition, right?
Mhm.
So if that is happening, the
Something else is
question is,
too.
what's going on with that baby? Something is
Mhm.
happening. That baby is hurting. What has happened? Who hasn't protected this child, that this is how they are showing up right now, because that's what they feel like they have to do to be safe, because behavior serves a function. Our brains are always trying to keep us safe. So if this is what's happening, why do they feel like they have to protect themselves? Who is not protecting them? It's why I be asking people, so why do you want to have, why are you choosing to have children?
Mhm.
Because
100%.
if you're not going to hold all these things and hold the gravity of this responsibility close to you with every decision, every conversation, everything, you don't need to have responsibility for a person,
Mhm.
so yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and not to mention, like, no child. I can't imagine a type of child who deserves to get beatings. But like you talking about all of us neurodivergents who were in talented and gifted, we weren't out here acting the goddamn donkey in these streets. We weren't. One of the defining features of the tag kids, or didn't they change it to something else? When I was a
Probably.
kid, it was tag. I think it's gate now or something, or it
Sure.
was. But
All of that.
whatever. Yeah, whatever the case may be, these were introspective children. Like you just said, we were children who were interested in learning from our mistakes, but that's all our parents knew. Teach them with violence. So
And that's
yeah.
all they knew. And I get that. Like, I get the historical implications. It goes back to slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they were telling me I couldn't feel. Well, you definitely can't be out here crying, or else something is going to happen to you. You got to toughen up.
Mm-hmm.
You got a hard life. Like, I get that. Where it becomes sticky for me is in the now accountability, because
Mm-hmm.
now you're seeing the
Mm-hmm.
impact of the actions that you made then. I get where it comes from, but
Mm-hmm.
there also has to be a level of
Accountability.
accountability to the harm that
Mm-hmm.
has been caused. And it's important, like I talk to people about intention versus impact all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
get that in your mind, in your brain, in your trauma, in your lens, in your perspective, that you thought that was the best thing that you could do.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you know better, it's time to take accountability and try to repair those wrongs.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. One of my aunts, so not only do I not talk to my mother, I really don't talk to many people in my family,
Mm-hmm.
especially like
Same.
my aunts and uncles, because they were enablers.
Mm-hmm.
And they did enable her, they continue to enable her, and it's disgusting. And I'm disgusted by it, even though I have been so vocal about the impact that it's had on me. But
Mm-hmm.
one of my
I
aunts
get you.
reached out, and she was like, I thought I was doing the right thing. That was not it. I was not there for you. And I that was not what that was supposed to look like. And I am so sorry. And that goes so far.
Yes, it
My
does.
mother never apologized for anything that she did.
Mine neither. Yeah, mine neither. And we're also no contact. And that's all I've wanted all along was an acknowledgement of what you've done. And they don't do it. And I think that part of what makes it more possible for them to feel like they don't have to is, like you just said, the whole family enables them. The whole family backs them. So when you choose to go no contact, you kind of by default lose the whole family.
The whole family.
So I lost them. Fuck them. Fuck
I,
them. Like, if nobody can stand up. And what's nuts is that when we were children, my cousins called my mom mommy dearest. They all knew what was going on.
oh
And
my
even
God,
now,
I had mommy dearest too.
at some point somebody should say something, and everybody just still letting it slide. It's not cute. That's it for part 1 of this episode. Check back for part 2 in 2 weeks. Until then, connect with us in the Soft app, on the 24/7 Body Double Zoom that's exclusively for Soft subscribers, or on YouTube live meditations every Sunday at 1 p.m. All of this and more are included in your $10 monthly subscription to Soft. If you haven't yet subscribed, you can do so by visiting the soft.app. That is the soft.app. Okay, love you, bye.